The hunt begins for the next Astros manager. Who's in, who's out, and who's making the decisions? It's episode 48 of Stone Cold Stros, and it starts right now. That's a lot shorter. Welcome into Stone Cold Stros. I'm Braden Strange. I'm joined by Charlie Palillo and Josh Jordan. Follow them on Twitter, X, at Palillo and at Josh Jordan 975. Be sure to hit like on this video. Subscribe to the channel if you're watching on YouTube. The full version is available on podcast right now in audio form at your favorite podcast app. Just a reminder, the three of us host a Texans podcast called Texans on Tap. We would love it if you followed us on those channels as well. Before we get started, Charlie, I just wanted to thank everybody who made it out to Tailgate last week. Wow, that was a great event. Delicious food, great drinks, great turnout, and apparently just in time because now the weather's all cold and wet. Charlie, it is episode 48. Which Astros player who wore the number 48 are you thinking of this week?
Gets tougher and tougher with these higher numbers. Maybe we make it through 52. Speaking of big events, celebrate a full year of Stone Cold Stros, and then we cap assigning the numbers because we don't want to really go with the unworthy. But we have one for number 48, the late pitcher, Vern Rule. 1980 Astros, the first Astros team that ever made the postseason. Well, they took a gut shot midway in the year. J.R. Richard with the stroke that ended his career, obviously altered the rest of his life. So the Astros had a tremendous void added to their starting rotation. Vern Rule was the guy who largely filled that. He was spectacular after the All-Star break, made 15 starts, an ERA of 2.03. 5 of his last 6 starts of that regular season, complete game wins. When the Astros made the playoffs in game 163, a one-game playoff. He started game 4 of the National League Championship Series, pitched well, bullpen gave it up. Astros lost that game in extra innings, lost game 5 in extra innings, almost making their first World Series. Well, had to wait another quarter century to finally get there. But Vern Rule, in 1980, he was a stud filling in for gigantic shoes to fill in J.R. Richard.
Thank you, Charlie. So it is the fall. Do you know where your manager's at? Because the Astros do not. The hunt for their next manager begins as Dusty Baker resigns, leaves, retires. I don't know what you want to call that. Was allowed to leave on his own accord was the best way probably to put that. We got the revelation from Brian McTaggart that Jim Crane and Jeff Bagwell, along with thank you, Charlie. Along with Dana Brown, would be heading the manager search. Essentially, it sounds like Crane and Bagwell are taking on a baseball ops sort of role in this organization. Before we get into candidates, do you think this sounds like a healthy setup for the Astros to operate on this level?
Well, if we hearken back to how offseason 2022-23 worked out, I suppose the initial answer would be no, not really. And the name of Jeff Bagwell is burrowed in both of Jim Crane's ears. Right? Is it still Jeff in one and is Reggie Jackson still in the other? But that would augur very well for Brad Ausmus's chances of getting the job. And I'm not saying that Brad Ausmus would be a terrible managerial hire, but there would be a smell component to it that, boy, Jeff Bagwell is really with a lot of clout. Ausmus was his bestie back in their playing days together. And I just don't think that Jeff Bagwell, day in, day out, is engaged enough that he should have not the final vote. That'll be Jim Crane, but the second biggest vote in the room on this. I don't think we should be passing the hat or scheduling a pity party for Dana Brown. But boy, okay, he's general manager, right? He should not have Jeff Luhnow's clout. He doesn't have Jeff Luhnow's accomplishment. So he's not president of all baseball operations. But it is putting Dana Brown in kind of an awkward spot if he's tangentially involved in the managerial hire. I'll speak specifically in detail a little bit more here to Ausmus as we open it up. Didn't distinguish himself in 2 jobs. With the Detroit Tigers, had winning season, losing season, winning season, losing season, got fired. A couple of years later, 1 year with the Angels, one of Mike Trout's MVP winning seasons. Had Shohei Ohtani, the hitter, for about 2/3 of the season and lost 90 games. But the pitching staff was brutal I included this in the column the other day. They had 8 different starting pitchers make at least 10 starts. The best of them had an ERA of 4.51. They had a couple of guys over 6. So unless that's held against Ausmus, as a brilliant mind of a catcher, does this remind you of anyone? That he just masters all things pitching from behind the plate. If that didn't translate into the dugout, you're going to hold it against Ausmus that the pitching staff was a joke. But I do think it would be an uninspired hire. The buddy system can work out, but it would not be a guiding principle of mine in hiring the next Astros manager.
Yeah, I mean, it's just not a good look, with the buddy system thing that Charlie talked about, and with him being the runner-up to being the GM last year, and now we're already hearing that he's a front runner for the manager role this year. It's just not a great look, especially if you're an Astros fan. It's going to ruffle some feathers, and if you want somebody that really works great with pitchers, why did you let Brent Strom leave? I was watching an interview with him on the set with some of the guys post-game, and he talked about how they changed some things up against Philadelphia midway through the series. They kind of did some self-scouting and realized they weren't pitching inside nearly enough, and they made that change, and that changed things for them and the outcome of that series. So just letting Brent Strom get away, I think getting rid of James Click was a mistake. Jim Crane has made some good moves. The Dusty Baker hiring at the time, that really worked out. Jeff Luhnow hiring, that obviously worked out. So Crane's had some hits, but I think he's also had some misses. So you hired Dana Brown. I'd like to see what he thinks and who he would recommend, even if it is somebody from the Brave staff or somebody he's familiar with otherwise. I like the idea of listening to your GM. I want more analytics. I know the Astros, they say they're not getting away from analytics, but you want to make sure you have a manager that agrees with that and really means it. Doesn't just say it as lip service, that they really believe in the numbers, because that's what has built this Astros team.
If the GM is not integrally involved in the hiring of the manager, he's not the general manager. I mean, remake his title, Director of Minor League Operations, Player Development, Scouting, and he'll propose some trades, but Bagwell and Ausmus and Jim Crane will really be able to play a trump card anytime they want. Again, Dana Brown has one of 30 of these jobs by title, and it pays well whatever his salary is, but it's a little bit of an unseemly feel if it winds up going in that direction. Right. Oftentimes, managers thinking, I'm in trouble when a general manager gets hired who did not hire that manager. Obviously, there was no clamor organizationally. Hey, replace Dusty Baker after winning the World Series. It's not as if Dana Brown was stuck with Dusty Baker, but when Dusty does retire, and I think it was a full-on Dusty decision, but if he didn't make it himself, he was going to be told, hey, you can jump happily into managerial retirement, or we can give you a little push if that's what it's going to take. Fortunately, it didn't come to that. I mean, Dusty deserved the dignity, the honor to go out the way that he did. But if Dana Brown is wallpaper as they're shopping for managers, that would be the kind of thing that would cause some tittering around Major League Baseball. Of course, the Astros can just say, how many of the last 7 league championship series have you played in? Overall, we know what we're doing in decision-making. But no one's infallible. No one has a 100% track record in personnel hires or managerial hires or general managerial hires, all of the above. But Brad Ausmus is a sharp guy. I'm sure there are plenty of dumb guys who come out of Ivy League schools who were, legacy students and that. But, Ausmus, he was Maldi way before Maldi, a tremendous catcher who couldn't hit worth a damn, but man, could he call a game and cut down the running game. And, he was the brains of the operation on the field. And also just a real good guy, Brad Ausmus. So from that standpoint, I'd be fine with the hire. But the process, if he was to wind up the guy.
Yeah, and I think just considering the general negativity around him, I do wonder if that decision wouldn't be seen as tone deaf, kind of the way you guys are talking about the optics of the search and how that would appear. I do wonder if it'd be tone deaf. And Charlie, I think to your point is beyond just the qualifications. I do think that it almost put Brad in an unfair position where he's behind the 8 ball right out of the gate, where some fans will just never give him a fair shake, depending, regardless of what the outcome is. And you talked about Brad Ausmus not really distinguishing himself in previous roles. Neither had AJ Hinch. AJ Hinch inherited a team that started winning, and so it made his appearance of a decision maker that much better because of the performance of the team. A lot of people downplayed Dusty's role when he came to Houston because they talked about how he just walked into a winner. So maybe his decisions day in, day out weren't as important. And, the team didn't fire their manager because he wasn't a winner. The team fired AJ because of the scandal. But now the team's in a different place. There is a little bit more of a question regarding the future of this team and kind of the talent on the field. So how important is it now that Jim Crane, Bagwell, and Dana Brown get it right?
Yeah, look, I mean, the most important part of all this is your roster. It's about talent first, and the Astros still have a good team, but they don't have a great team anymore. They don't have a great roster anymore. This is not the squad that Dusty Baker took over in 2020, and everything was so funky in the short COVID season, right? The Astros were 29-31 before winning a couple of playoff series. But then when things got back to normal, if you will, the Astros got back to being great, right? 2020, all they'd lost was Garrett Cole. Since then, Prime Correa, Prime Springer. Altuve had another magnificent season, but also missed about a third of it to injury. He turns 34 in May. Obviously, Michael Brantley's immaterial now. So they're in a little bit different phase. So to me, and if Ausmus was to get the job, this is what you signed up for, buddy. And if you can't handle the heat, get out of the kitchen. If people are always going to be thinking, well, he got the job because he's buds with Bagwell. But same thing with AJ Hinch. Those who'd like to go back to the future, I'd have no interest in bringing back AJ Hinch, who I think did a wonderful job here, was a good manager. If you want to set aside pitching decisions, Game 7 against the Nationals, but did a fine job. I thought AJ Hinch was just brilliant as a human being in the aftermath of Harvey, as a voice for the Astros and for the city. And then the whole Brandon Taubman episode, I thought Hinch was the biggest grown-up in the organization in what he had to say to that in a press conference. And then he turned out to be kind of Fredo of the Corleones and the whole cheating thing, separate matter. But you don't want AJ Hinch back, even if he could get out of the Detroit contract, which apparently has 2 years left. If he went to them and had permission, I wouldn't want to talk to AJ Hinch, because you hire AJ Hinch if he's God's gift to tactics and you think he's the anti-Dusty Baker. Well, every series you play, you're bringing back the scandal again. Well, AJ, what's different about managing the team this time? And players would be asking, is AJ different back then? Has he broken any TVs in the hallway? Why would you want to go down that path? If everything was the same about the roster and you thought it was like, what was it, the last episode of Dallas, talk about a dated reference when Victoria Principal, hang on, genuflecting. Victoria Principal woke up and an entire season was a dream. And Bobby Ewing had not died or whatever it was. Okay, God, did I stray on this? No, it's not like you hit a 4-year pause button, you bring back AJ and you pick up right where you left off. So now let him continue to build with the Tigers, and if he gets back in the playoffs with them, great. But the Astros, from within or without, they need a new manager who hasn't had the job before.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think turning back the clock and going back to AJ is the plan either. And who knows? Ausmus could turn out to be a great manager. We don't know. I don't have a fortune-telling crystal ball here, but it just does. It makes me think that this team is going to be built and run by Bagwell and Ausmus texting back and forth to each other. Like, to me, that's how this team is going to be built and what the future will look like if this comes to fruition here. And that it just worries me a little bit because, I know this is old, but all the stuff in the offseason, none of it really worked out. Michael Brantley, Montero might be the worst of all the deals. Abreu, I know he came on in the postseason, a little towards the end of the regular year, but still terrible contract. This is what happens when the Jeff Bagwells kind of get their way, at least allegedly. That's what we've been hearing. So that worries me that it's just going to be him kicking around those bad ideas to Ausmus. And it's going to be those guys making these decisions instead of the numbered nerds, which got us here.
So I guess if I'm playing devil's advocate in this, we do have to kind of look at the lens of Jim Crane's ownership of this team through, look, kind of take a step back and look at a sample size of his ownership here. Jim Crane pushed for the Justin Verlander deal. Jim Crane pushed for the Zach Greinke trade. Jim Crane finalized the deal which brought Justin Verlander back. So when we talk about Jim Crane's legacy on this team, he has been behind some of the major moves that have put this team over the top. So I think it does, we do need to kind of, bear that in mind when we're talking about his influence in the decision making here, because outside of this past offseason in which they didn't have a general manager place, I think Jim Crane's influence on this team has generally been looked at as a positive. That being said, when Dusty Baker was brought in, Dusty Baker is an established Hall of Famer, and he was going to manage his way. Do we think that they're going to bring a guy in who's going to be influenced or allow influence from the front office to happen? Or do you think they'll have put someone in place that will have that sort of, cachet to be able to butt up against the front office? And I guess maybe like looking back on how Dusty pushed against some things that maybe would have been a positive against the team, would that even be a positive, is to have someone who bumps heads with the front office?
Yeah, whether bumping heads is too strong to be healthy over any period of time, I do want contrarian viewpoint. If everyone's marching in lockstep, whatever you say, boss, that's not always going to work out. If it is a little Bagwell Crane access that has veered a little less analytically from Luno, they built this dynastic run on the back of that. And, the nouveau riche teams, the Baltimore Orioles, Mike Elias, Sig Mejdal, branches of the Jeff Luno tree. So other than it's not how you want to play with a toy, why would you want to sever those philosophical branches? Right, Bagwell with the quote a year or two ago that, the game's played by players, not by computers. Well, of course, but the players can't always analyze the game well and know what works well. There's a long history of failed players, great players as managers, as general managers. Right? Players, hey, I just play, right? I don't think, I play. Well, the thinking part of the game does matter, and it largely built the Astros into what they've been for the better part of a decade. I don't want to have that wadded up and thrown out. And, I don't think the walls are coming tumbling down, whoever they hire as manager. But if you are Joe Espada and maybe Omar Lopez as well, and you bring in Brad Ausmus, or maybe even if you were able to and brought back AJ Hinch, what are you thinking? If I'm Joe Espada, I'd be thinking, I probably had enough here. Maybe even if there isn't another managerial job available to him now elsewhere, which, as I mentioned, Joe Espada, I'm not flat out endorsing him for the job above everyone else. But in terms of someone who hasn't been a big league manager, what more dues would you want paid? And if you want some organizational continuity, it's different being the bench coach as opposed to being the manager. It's not quite teacher, substitute teacher. But that he is very well regarded in the clubhouse. I don't think that fosters him being run over by the players any more than, well, now I'm the manager. You loved me before. Now I'm a tyrant. But Espada worked under Hinch, worked under Baker, time in multiple organizations before that. And by the way, would work relatively cheap as a big league manager goes as a first timer in the job. So I guess I will give a direct endorsement relative to Hinch or Ausmus. I'd much rather see Joe Espada get the opportunity, and not that either AJ or Ausmus are old guys, but Joe Espada, youngish, multilingual and Hispanic in this market. What's not to like?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Espada. I love what he did there when after Dusty got thrown out, assuming that was him in Game 5 with the pinch hitting that he did, and that really worked out for the Astros, helped him come back and win that game. But I look at it, I think what's scary as an Astros fan is just you saw Click lose a power battle to Dusty Baker, basically. And if we assume that Bagwell and Ausmus are kind of buddies, and Ausmus gets that job, and we've heard it reported that Crane listens to Bagwell more than anybody. So it makes you wonder, is Dana Brown already below Ausmus as the GM and running this thing, if we've already seen the field manager get more power? And we've also seen people lose, or them lose some people with Bill Ferkus out, who had been there since Luno was around as one of the assistant GMs. their farm, was it Sarah Goodrum? They moved on from her when she was running the Astros farm system. So we're seeing a lot of people leaving. And if more people are coming in that feel more like, for lack of a better word, Jeff Bagwell's buddies, that's a concern to me. But Joe Espada, I think, would be a good fit. But I mean, there's probably a reason he's been interviewed by 6 different clubs and never gotten the gig. Maybe there's something there that we're not seeing. Only those guys in those meetings are going to know, and they're going to have those interviews. They're going to talk to these guys. They're going to dig up everything on them. I just hope that Dana Brown's a part of this, or else why did you hire this guy?
Well, and on Bagwell, if he is to push hard for Ausmus to get the job, okay, but they just let $12 million on fire, basically bringing back Michael Brantley for last season. As long as Bags doesn't say, let's also bring back my other best buddy from that era of Astros baseball. Maybe Moises Alou has something a little left to play left field. That's where I'd have to draw the line.
Do you guys see any wild cards as a possibility for manager, like, and who might those be? Could we see maybe a veteran that's in the vein of Dusty, maybe like a Buck Showalter or somebody like that, a Joe Girardi, or do you think they're going to go maybe younger, less experienced for this role?
Yeah, well, I guess they'd be wild cards because you wouldn't foresee it coming, but you gave a couple of names. I'm no on Showalter. I think's been a fine manager, and everywhere he's gone, they've gotten better before he wound up wearing out his welcome. They won 101 games with the Mets last year. I don't think Buck Showalter is why the Mets whole season caved in 2023. But, I think with a generally veteran roster, Showalter's just not the right fit. Girardi, to me, is just not a real good manager. You want to question Dusty Baker tactically. Girardi, for another catcher who thought the game, knew the game, that guy was robotic to a grave fault sometimes with his bullpen decisions. A wild card who I'd go, oh my goodness, Craig Counsell, who probably is considered one of the 3 or 4 best managers in the game. He's a managerial free agent. I mean, he's a Wisconsin guy. All these years with the Milwaukee Brewers, but he also would like to get paid. And if he has a chance to set a new market for himself, but also for managers, I'd be stunned if Jim Crane said, okay, if that new market's $6 million per year for my manager, I'm in on Craig Counsell. So that would really shock me. I mean, you want a wild card of wild cards. Martin Maldonado wanted a segue from, hey, I know I wouldn't be in the lineup. I'm not saying player manager. But the wildest of wild cards, just to throw one out there, not believing there's a snowball's chance, except I guess there's always a snowball's chance. Right? Beltran was going to manage the Mets. Maldonado, if he wanted an interview, I bet you he'd get that.
Yeah, I bet he would. Chandler Rowe makes a good point. Crane typically doesn't promote from within. He usually looks outside the organization for these things, a la Dana Brown, Dusty Baker. He likes big names. We know he likes big names from the Yankees, with Reggie Jackson being part of this baseball men group. So big names, Yankees, Don Mattingly, I wouldn't be necessarily interested, but he's a big name. He's a former Yankee. That could be somebody that Chandler Rome listed. He put out an article in The Athletic with a bunch of different possible candidates. Mattingly is on the list amongst some other guys. So, maybe he just wants a big name, something like that. But, for me, that's probably not where I'd be looking.
And to throw one other name that's at least been put in the stew, Jeff Bannister, Lamarck High School, University of Houston, was manager of the Texas Rangers, which some would think, he got fired there. What do I want sloppy seconds from the Rangers? Well, currently working in the World Series as the Arizona Diamondbacks bench coach, and Torey Lovello, their manager's given Bannister a lot of credit for helping reshape the culture. So there would be some, logical principles to certainly at least interviewing Bannister. My first thought was, how would it sell with Astros fans, a guy who the Rangers dumped not all that long ago? But I hedge myself on that, I never trade with a team in my division. Well, if it's the best trade for my team, I'm not worried about whether it's the team in my division because I'm expected to win the trade and be better for it. So if I deem Jeff Bannister the best candidate for the job, and then you throw in the hometown angle, I'm not hiring the guy because of the hometown angle, but I guess it would be a little bonus if you went that route. But a name who, again, is probably at least interview worthy.
I think I'm going to, just for the sake of wild cards, I'll throw out a name. Brent Strom. I know, we think of him as a pitching coach. Pitching is a big need for this team right now, and someone who knows who has experience managing this staff and kind of knows the ins and outs of it. I wouldn't expect it, but if we're talking wild cards, that would be my choice for a wild card. I think that's going to be it for part 1 of Stone Cold Stros. To listen to the full podcast, it's up right now at your favorite podcast provider. And to watch the rest of the conversation on YouTube, make sure you check out the Stone Cold Stros playlist. We'll be releasing the rest of those videos shortly. As always, go Stros.